bomb there for his photo op. So give you an idea of what a 1,000-kilogram bomb looks like. You'll see that. But here's another story. As the airplanes are flying from the south, incendiaries are falling out of the sky. One of those incendiaries hits the side of the dome. Now, you can't see the dome from this position, so if you're in the cathedral, you don't know that there's an incendiary burning through lead in the wooden structure underneath. You can see that could be a wooden structure there. Anyway, inside for wood, you can actually pay to go up and have a look at what's inside the dome, and it's quite something. But the reality is, it was London Bridge railway station that rings St. Paul's and goes, "Hello, chaps, you know you're on fire." And everybody south of London can see St. Paul's dome with flames shooting out the side of it, and everybody out west as well, and all the journalists over there. There's an American journalist who sent a telegram back to New York stating this is what the headline's going to be. St. Paul's destroyed.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Thankfully, the crew were able to get up into the inside of it and start dealing with it from there. But this is a really nice image because during the war, every time something like this happens, a professional has to abseil down onto the dome and actually repair and patch up the cathedral. So there was constant reworking and fixing up of this building all the way through the war. Come this way. On the night, okay? So this building here. But if you see beside Café Rouge, there's nothing, there's a tree. So this is this building here. This building blows up, and then you can see that it's missing in this image there, okay? So, if you're a firefighter standing here, and your job is to pump water into these buildings, and the building in front of you blows up, where does the shrapnel go? It plows into the cathedral. So that mark there is because it's left there for posterity. You can see the fresh stone underneath it. That's all repair work. But you have a lump coming straight out of the building, plowing into that. You're a firefighter standing here. It's bouncing off the wall into the back of your head. So basically, this is a health and safety nightmare, this location right here. Let's cross over. It's about 10 months. For the 7th of September, the first day of the Blitz, he's over in Islington in his fire station. Now, he's bitching about the fact that there's nothing exciting going on in his life. So the war is in Europe and nothing's come to London just yet, and that's what he's complaining about, how boring it is. Anyway, 7th of September, slightly different. Takes an hour for him to drive from his fire station to get to the Docklands. That's unusually long. When he gets there, there's 30 square miles of fire. They have no comprehension of how they're going to deal with it, just start pumping water and hope for the best. But he describes the anti-aircraft guns. So the anti-aircraft guns are firing shells into the sky. They're really going to town on it because it's the first day of the Blitz. So with that, everything you send up that explodes, where is it all coming? Straight back down on top of fire crews. One of the reasons you were running to an air raid shelter was to avoid the metal rain, that if any one of those fragments hits you in the head, it's going straight through you and you are dead. Hundreds of people, civilians, get killed by British anti-aircraft gun shrapnel falling out of the sky. So that's why in this image you see that he's wearing a steel helmet, and all night long he's listening to bing, 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 as these things are falling out of the sky. Anyway, at the end of his diary entry for the 7th of September, he talks about this overwhelming sense of guilt for having complained and bitched about nothing exciting happening for him. He's here on the 29th of December. So, this is what the whole area looks like, this area here. 6 p.m, 10,000 incendiaries light the place up. That was the very best navigators and pilots. The second air raid comes in at 7:30. These guys are significantly less experienced, but the job is significantly easier. So they just dump more high explosive bombs in. These high explosive bombs are spreading the fire, more incendiaries, but they also have another pointy bomb that buries itself in the ground and detonates underground. When they successfully detonate underground, the shock wave is now going through the ground. Anywhere there's a water main or a pipe, they fracture, leaks water, you lose water pressure, and that's it, you've no more water to fight with. So that's why by 9 p.m, as the third air raid is roaring in, they run out of water. Where are you going to get the water from?
The river.
Correct. So the River Thames is just down there. So the Luftwaffe have chosen this Sunday, because it's just after Christmas, there's nobody around, the place is empty, to fight the fires. Those limited fire crews that come in are up against it. They're calling in fire service personnel from outside of London to drive here. They're not going to get here before the last plane flies off. So this is working brilliantly. They've now shut off the water supply from the mains. So now how do you stop the firefighters from getting access to the river? By coinciding your air raid with lowest tide of the month.
Oh.
So when the fireboats came up, which are just floating pumps, they've got holes in the hull, and they suck water up and pump it up the hill at high capacity. You know, in New York when they're flying the jets of water out in front of cruise ships and all of that jazz, that's the power these things have. So guess what? Anyway, because of low tide, the boats were very low in the water. What was underneath the hull of the boat was the bed of the river, so that's all mud. So when they turned their high capacity pumps on, the mud just went loop, and that was it. All of the fireboats were taken out of action. So what's happening here is they're connecting the hoses together, and they're using the fire trucks as the pumps, but you now have to wade out into the river, and you have to hold onto the hose and dip it into the water. You can't let go of the hose because it'll sink to the bottom and suck up mud. It is the 29th of December, and crews are permanently stationed in the river doing this. These guys are holding onto brass couplings with their bare hands, as there's a national shortage of gloves, and everybody's complaining about the cold, despite everything burning at over 1,000 degrees centigrade. Now that 9 o'clock air raid, when they flew in and dropped their bombs in, they hit the target spot on again, adding more fuel, incendiaries and bombs in. When they were flying in, they could witness the beginnings of a firestorm. So imagine now a big cone of hot air rising up.
Right.
That is drawing the flames up. The wind started to pick up. So independent of this cycle, the wind is picking up. So it's getting worse. They are elated that they've hit the target, and they're flying off to Berlin. Everybody's flying off to Berlin after London, and they're landing in Berlin, reporting back on the way how well it's going. Now, when they get to Berlin in their airfield, fog is settling. And they have 2 more air raids in London. One to hit London at 10:30 and another one at 1 o'clock in the morning. And they realize that by the time the 1 o'clock crew hit London from France to London, then go to Berlin, they won't be able to land in the airfield because the fog will be too thick. So what they decided to do, it was so well executed up to this point, the 10:30 will fly in, finish the job, and the 1 o'clock crew will fly direct to Berlin, cancelling the air raid completely. Everybody will land in Berlin, ready for sorties out of Berlin over the following days. German efficiency and logistics right there. So the 10:30 air raid is the last air raid. They're flying in. These are another 30 bombers, and these are the least experienced pilots available on the night because the fire's even bigger and it's easier to spot and it's easier to drop your bombs in. But these are young men in their early 20s. And like most young men in their early 20s, they prematurely ejected their bombs. They missed the target. So, if you are standing down by HMS Belfast, you will see the warship, and then behind that, you will see glass buildings. That whole area is destroyed by those pilots at 10:30. No further ordnance went in here. So when I mentioned earlier 167 people lose their lives, that's where they're losing their lives, because this place has already been evacuated, and that's residential. So with that, that's it. There's no further bombing in this area. The air raid sirens are turned off by 12 midnight. It is now down to the fire service to finish the job, protect that building, and start putting out the fire. The problem is, the building's secure, but that's Monday morning, and the fires are still going. Tuesday, the fires are still going. It isn't until Wednesday, the 1st of January 1941, that the last fire in the City of London is extinguished. The destruction of the City of London is complete, but everybody wakes up to see that building standing and is rejoicing at the outcome. So it is a failed air raid as a consequence. Unfortunately though, Frank Hurd is on this memorial. So these are the names of fire crews who died in World War II. There's Frank Hurd's name up there. He is one of the 16 firefighters who lost his life on the 29th of December. A high explosive bomb went off in Smithfield Market, and that's how he lost his life. He was a volunteer, he was 24 years old. These are the names of fire crews throughout the UK who lost their lives in World War II. Women worked in administrative roles and also pretty much everything else. Fire watch, you name it, they did it. But these guys were on the front line, and that's why there's a higher loss of life for men. But the reality is this: in the Blitz, civilians are being targeted, and it's estimated that about 42,000 civilians lose their lives over the 8-month period. 25,000 are Londoners. But it is very important to point out that Londoners were very clear that you should not forget one basic fact about World War II. Adolf Hitler had only one testicle. Never forget.
I got it.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're wondering how we know that Adolf Hitler only had one testicle, we sung songs about it. Hitler has only got one ball, Goering has two but very small. Himmler has something similar, and poor old Goebbels has no balls at all. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're always thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, by the way, and I have a picture. There is a picture of Winston. No. It's Winston Churchill. You thought you were going to see Hitler's one testicle, didn't you?
He had balls.
Yeah, exactly. So Adolf Hitler had no children because he was infertile, because he only had one descendant testicle. Winston Churchill, pictured here in the 1951 general election by this stage, has had 5 children, proving not only has he 2 balls, but they are magnificent balls. And he is often compared to the English bulldog. Some people say that face there reminds them of that face there. And I say no, it's the other end of the dog they're talking about. Would also like to say that the Soviets got to Hitler's body first, and they exhumed the body from which was torched. So just imagine now you got Dave and Gary, 2 Nazis, and they're told, stay here and torch these bodies and make sure there's nothing left, and do not leave until the job is done. And they go, right, where are you going? Don't worry about where you're going. You just don't leave until that job is done. Anyway, they left and before the job was done, and the Soviets came in and got to the charred body of Eva Braun and Adolf Hitler. And they exhumed the body and then found his dentist and then found the dental records and were able to confirm that they indeed had the body of Adolf Hitler from his dental records. The autopsy goes on to say he had what of this. Winston Churchill had to ship all the gold out of the Bank of England, ship it to Canada. Canadians then shipped it down into America. The Americans opened it up and went, woohoo, here's some arms. One of the things they found in the boxes was Spanish doubloons. Yeah, because what had happened is the Spanish went over to America, stole Spanish gold from the Incas and the Aztecs and the Americans and the Mexicans and the Texans and everybody. And then the British robbed the Spanish as they were returning the gold back to Europe, but they never melted it down. So it was lovely to see the money come back to America again as the Spanish doubloons. But the point is, all of that money was spent by the 29th of December 1940, and Roosevelt is sitting in the White House getting the reports of the destruction of the City of London, and his biggest concern is now, what is his #1 customer going to pay for these weapons with?
Tea.
Well, no, even better. Finance. So America financed the war with a program called Lend-Lease,
right,
which was decided and invented on the 29th of December as this city burned. Lend-Lease would not be returned until 2006. So when after the war in 1945, all the gold is gone out of the country, sold off, never to be seen again, and now we're saddled with an enormous amount of debt. So, what could they not afford to do? Rebuild. So here in the City of London, offices were at the lowest level of priority, so they didn't rebuild until the mid-50s in earnest. So let's put that into perspective. 1940 to the mid-50s, this is just one massive site of dereliction. Today, they decided here they weren't ever going to rebuild again and have nice little parks around St. Paul's, and that's why we have them. So if you've ever wondered, we were broke. And the Americans made a lot of money out of it, and that's what is going on in today's politics as well. Everybody wants American support, and America's going, America, sign this document, and we will sort you out, and you'll be paying it back for decades to come. Anyway, here's an image of what dereliction looks like. This is a color image, so it's pretty brutal. Here's an image of, what have I done? No, go back. Here's a picture of what it was like beforehand. So if we look here, this is Ave Maria Lane, heading up here. There's the steeple for that building there. And these are all bookshops. And all of these get blown to bits, and all the bits end up into the cathedral. So what we're going to do is have a look at the shrapnel marks left on the walls. Let's go up Ave Maria Lane, and the grass are the buildings. Come this way. By the way, that's St. Paul's School today. They moved there in the 1960s. You're looking at lovely 60s buildings. There's the shrapnel mark. So just to put this into perspective, the buildings blew up and then they were not there again. So the only time that this can happen is the 29th of December. And what they've done is they've left these ones here for posterity and repaired the rest. So anything that you see that's an off-color shade of stone that's inserted in it is the repair work.
Give yourself like a bit of time. Give yourself a walking break.
And here we get to see how substantial that repair work needed to be. And at the top level, you can see loads more shrapnel marks up there. So the scale of these explosions is quite high. This panel here of flowers was repaired during COVID. So it's still an ongoing repair work that's going on here. I want to just clarify something, because I sort of massaged the truth a little bit to get my narrative home. Remember the bomb that blew up and moved the dome? That happened in April after this night. The reason is Hitler went to bed that night on the 29th of December and went, "Hello Eva, any chance of you know what?" And Eva went, "Not a hope in hell." And then they went to sleep, and he was like, "I don't care, I'm going to be ruler of the free world after this." Wakes up in the morning, everybody's downstairs, and he goes, "Hello everybody, have I won?" And everybody's looking at the floor. The building is still standing. The city is destroyed. They cancelled the 1 o'clock air raid. The 10:30 air raid missed the target. It has failed comprehensively. So he's very upset with Hermann Goering. So Hermann Goering promises he's finishing the job, and that is what happened in April 1941 when that bomb detonated in the church. But when it failed to destroy the building, and it's perfect, the detonation, they decide, forget about it. Because the only other option is to set fire to the city of London and create a firestorm to destroy. Oh no, they can't do that because they've already destroyed everything. So it is at this point that they decide that they're not going to target the cathedral again. And the reason they do this is not because they want to preserve it, it's because the pilots are reporting back that when they're flying in at night and there's fog covering the entire city, up on this hill is the only left building in the area, and on top of it is the cathedral standing proud, poking just above the clouds, and they're all going, "Oh, there it is." And they know exactly where they are in terms of where their targets are in relation to St. Paul's Cathedral. So it's actually proving more valuable as a waypoint for pilots in London to signify where they are. The Allies do exactly the same with Cologne Cathedral when they're firebombing Cologne Cathedral, because keep the cathedral standing, then they'll always know where the centre of Cologne is to destroy it. And that's what the policy is. It's confused into this idea that people were deliberately protecting each other's iconic buildings. It's to do with strategy. And then this is a charity that raise awareness to animal welfare and migrating animals and wild animals and stuff like that. And these things get moved around. There's loads of versions of these all over London, and we move them around all the time. But what I want to do now is I want to show you a film. This film is produced by the fire service, and this film is to show you in the cinema what's actually going on here. But before we do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you over to the corner over there because I want to get you a better view of St. Paul's Cathedral for reasons you will see in the film. So that's just going to be a point of reference when you watch this film. So we're watching the introduction of this film, and as I say, the fire service themselves are producing this, filming it live. Well, they're filming it while this is happening, then going off and editing it into a newsreel distributed by Pathé News, and you're on a hot date and this is what comes up before your film.
On the momentous night of Sunday, the 29th of December 1940, from shortly after 6 o'clock until 10:30, the German Air Force carried out one of the most devastating fire-raising raids of the war. Continuously for 4.5 hours, their main target was an area particularly vulnerable to fire, the City of London, an area that is often taxed with the considerable resources of the London Fire Brigade, even in peacetime. These grim scenes, reminiscent of the Great Fire of London nearly 3 centuries ago, were taken from the roof of St. Paul's. They embraced the area from St. Paul's Churchyard to Newgate Street, Paternoster Row, Ave Maria Lane, and the Stationers' Hall. In fighting the fire, 16 firemen were killed, 11 by high explosive bombs and 5 by falling walls. The injured numbered over 250.
So, it goes
No
on.
few others.
If you want to see that film in its entirety, just go to Google, put in the 29th of December 1940 BFI, British Film Institute. Just put that in. The very first hit is this film. It is free to use, it is open source. Anywho, but it's 12 minutes and 40 seconds long, the whole film. By the end of the film, what you'll have learned is everything that happened here from the firefighters' point of view. And you'll be thinking to yourself, why the hell did we go on that walking tour when I could have just sat at home and watched the video? I know, right? This picture was taken on the night. So there's the statue again. This is 5 million books burning. This is one of Adolf Hitler's more successful burning books evenings. Collins, as in HarperCollins today, were based here and they're no longer based here. All of the publishing industry disappeared afterwards. This picture is also taken on the night, and this is the iconic image taken by Herbert Mason. Herbert Mason works for the Daily Mail newspaper, but he also volunteers as Fire Watch. So what is he doing? He's over in Fleet Street, west of us. He's on top of a building, alerting the fire service to what's on fire and what's not. And then by 9 o'clock, everything's on fire, so there's nothing left for him to alert to. He's just across the road from his office. He had brought his camera with him, and now he's going to take photographs. But what he wants is this photograph, because he can see the flashes created by the bombs going off and how it's backlighting the cathedral beautifully. But he's not in charge of the flash. So he has to go click, click, click and hope to God that that shutter is open at the exact moment that he wants it. So he runs through reel after reel until he's confident that he might have it. But he won't know until he goes down into the dark room that evening, that morning by this stage, and process the film. One came out like that. So Monday morning, straight over to his editor, bang on the table, there's the picture, and his editor is publishing it the next morning for the Daily Mail of Tuesday, the 31st of December 1940. War's greatest picture. Look at that, it's iconic. Nothing, it's wonderful. The Daily Mail has not changed one bit. Pure propaganda. And what's also really amazing about this, they've cropped it and they've made sure that the burning buildings in the foreground, yeah, don't worry about that. Look at that, isn't that amazing? Don't worry, German media is going to rectify this by putting the buildings right back in again. So everybody's doing their own version of Photoshop on these to sell the narrative. What is German media saying? Look at the City of London burn. But what's even crazier is the date. 23rd January 1941. That's the earliest they could get it to press, because they had to smuggle it out of the country, get it over to Germany, and they would have done this either on a magazine or a thing, taken a photograph of that, reproduced it, and worked that way. Anyway, this place is what this place looks like. This is all demolished. That building there is that building there. It's called Chapter House. It's owned by the church. It's a more residency and places for priests to stay. And there it is again in colour. So all of these buildings have to be demolished except that one, because the church own it and they want to keep it. Everybody wants the compensation to get the hell out of here. And this is what they built in the 1960s. The finest example of utilitarian architecture. Now, I don't know if you know Prince Charles. You've heard of him, yeah, Prince Charles. We now call him King Charles. Some people call him the monarch formerly known as Prince. It's a 1990s music reference. I don't blame you if you don't get it. He got it.
I got it.
Yeah, he got it. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, what happens here is this is built. Prince Charles hates brutalism, utilitarianism. What he likes is this reconstructed Roman-style classical stuff. So he campaigns to Mitsubishi, who are the current site holders. In 1997, these buildings are demolished, and he writes letters to Mitsubishi, the planning authority, City of London, telling them what to build on this site, and they do what he says. So around the cathedral, we have classical buildings, very plain classical buildings, blending in with the beautifully classical and Baroque decoration of the cathedral. And then this is blended in, looking at accents of the dome and all of that kind of jazz. So what you are looking at is a Prince Charles fever dream right here. I know what you're thinking. Why did Charles get so heavily involved in this? In 1981, he married Princess Diana in St. Paul's Cathedral. These buildings were a problem, but it was overcome by putting the cameras between these buildings and Prince Charles pointing away from the buildings. So everybody was told to be here. This is the biggest live broadcast globally since the moon landings. So it had to be perfect. So that's fine, everybody's rolling. Charles and Diana start walking down the steps. Charles waves at the cameras. What does Charles see behind the cameras? These buildings, ruining the happiest day. So now you know. Okay. Camilla Parker Bowles was at Diana's wedding, and some say that that was very awkward for Diana and all concerned. But I want to be absolutely sure about something. At that time, Camilla Parker Bowles and Charles were just close friends. Okay. She shared his interest in architecture and was a massive fan of his erections.
Oh,
that's all.
That was it.
That's all you need to know on that.
All right.
Now, speaking of architectural erections, this is a copy of the monument outside Monument Station. That one is built for the Great Fire of London of 1666, and this one's here for the Second Great Fire of London, a phrase coined by an American journalist.
Yeah. Keep gouging.
Proud?
No, I'm not.
Come on, let's go. So what happened here that was one church, and it was called Christchurch Greyfriars, Franciscan Abbey. Anyway, the building, I'll show you a picture of it. Was the biggest church in the City of London, other than the cathedral. And as you can see in this image, iPad. Oh my God, there we go. That's the size of it. Cloistered, huge operation, big building. Burns in the Great Fire of London of 1666, and then they build this. Christopher Wren designs this, but it's a much smaller church. So it's about a third the original size. So this gets destroyed on the 29th of December 1940. The building kicking off. Gets destroyed on the 29th of December 1940. In 1981, they rebuilt this. This is the vestry house. It's now a dentist's office. But now, this building was converted into a home in 2006. It is now going through a full rebuild and restoration. With the, I'm assuming, the intent to sell But you can see we got a nice big entrance hall here, steps up to the mezzanine, and there is a lift taking you the